In this video, let us discuss about a k-means clustering problem. Use k-means clustering to cluster the following data into two groups. Assume the cluster centroid are m1 equal to 2 and m2 equal to 4. The distance function used is the Euclidean distance. Let us see the first iteration. First, we need to compute the distance between the points to the cluster centers. So since we have got only one dimension, the Euclidean distance is the square root of x1 minus x2 the whole square. So here it is square root of 2 minus 2 the whole square, and the distance between 2 and 4 is square root of 2 minus 4 the whole square. The value is 0 and 2 here. Similarly, compute the distance between all the points and the cluster centers. Now assign each point to the nearest cluster. So in this case, this is the shortest distance. So it is assigned to C1. 4, it is assigned to C2, cluster 2. 10 is closer to the second cluster. So assigned to cluster 2. 12 has the shortest distance to cluster 2. Assign 12 to cluster 2. 3 has equal distance to both the clusters. So we can assign to any one of the cluster. Let us assign to the first cluster. 20 has the shortest distance to the second cluster. So assign to cluster 2. 30 has shortest distance to second cluster. Assign to cluster 2. 11 assign to cluster 2. 25 has shortest distance to cluster 2. So assign to cluster 2. So these are the clusters after first epoch. 2 and 3 belongs to cluster 1 and 4, 10, 12, 20, 30, 11 and 25 forms the second cluster. So recompute the cluster centroid. Take the average of the cluster members. So here it is 2.5 and cluster 2 has the centroid 16. Now let us go to the second iteration. Recompute the distance between the points and the new cluster centroid. The first cluster has got the centroid 2.5 and the second cluster has got the centroid 16. So this is the distance between the points to the first cluster centroid, and this one is the distance to the second cluster centroid. Based on the distance, assign points to the clusters. So here this is the minimum distance. So assign to C1. This is the minimum distance assigned to C1. This is the minimum distance. So 10 is assigned to C2. The minimum distance 12 is assigned to C2. Similarly, 3 is assigned to C1, 20 is assigned to C2, 30 is assigned to C2, 11 is assigned to C2, and 25 is assigned to C2. So after second epoch, 2, 4, and 3 belongs to cluster 1, 10, 12, 20, 30, 11, and 25 belongs to cluster 2. Recompute the cluster centroid by taking the average of the cluster members. 3 is the cluster centroid for cluster 1, and 18 is the cluster centroid to cluster 2. Let us go to the third epoch. Recompute the distance between the data points to the new cluster centroid. So this is the distance between 2 and 3, and this one is the distance between 2 and 18. Similarly, compute the distance between all the points to the new cluster centroid 3 and 18. Based on the distance, assign the cluster membership. 2 is assigned to C1, 4 is assigned to C1, 10 is assigned to C1, 12 has minimum distance to cluster 2, so assigned to C2. 3 is assigned to C1, 20 has minimum distance to 2, so assigned to C2, 30 has minimum distance to cluster 2, so assigned to C2, 11 is assigned to C2, 25 assigned to C2. After third iteration, 2, 4, 10 and 3 belongs to cluster number 1, 12, 20, 30, 11 and 25 belongs to cluster number 2. Recompute the cluster centroid. The new cluster centroid are 4.8 and 19.6. In epoch 4, find the distance between the points to the new cluster centroid 4.8 and 19.6 using the Euclidean distance, square root of x1 minus x2 the whole square. Assign cluster membership based on the shortest distance. 2 is assigned to C1, 4 is assigned to C1, 10 assigned to C1, 12 assigned to C1, 3 assigned to C1, 20 assigned to C2, 30 assigned to C2, 11 assigned to C1, and 25 assigned to C2. These are the new cluster members. Recompute the cluster centroid. So this is 7 and the second has the cluster centroid 25. In epoch 5, recompute the distance between the points and the new cluster centroid 7 and 25. Assign points to the clusters based on the shortest distance. 2 is assigned to C1, 4 is assigned to C1, 10 is assigned to C1, 12 is assigned to C1, 3 is assigned to C1, 20 is assigned to C2, 30 is assigned to C2, 11 is assigned to C1, 25 is assigned to C2. So this is a new clusters after epoch 5. 2, 4, 10, 12, 3, 12, 11 belongs to cluster number 1. 20, 30, 25 belongs to cluster number 2. So there is no change in the cluster membership after epoch 5. Epoch 5 and epoch 4 has same cluster members. So that means the cluster converges, we can stop the process. And here is our final cluster.